everyone, Jordan here, and today we have another First Impressions following off yesterday's LatinVFR episode. Today we're taking a look at the Captainsim 777-200ER beta that released I think 1 or 2 days ago. This First Impressions is going to be a little bit different in comparison to the LatinVFR, which was pretty much all praise. In this First Impressions, I'm going to talk about what I like about the aircraft, what I don't like about the aircraft, and conclude with what I think Captainsim should do in order to have the best success with this product. Okay, so to begin with, Captainsim is not a new development group. They've been around for quite some time, at least over a decade to say the least, and they've made multiple aircraft for FS9, FSX, P3Dv4, and P3Dv4. So, just as a little background for this aircraft specifically, I think around 2005-2006-ish, Captainsim ended up making a lot of the 80s and 90s Boeing jetliners, excluding the 747, and they ended up making the 767, 757, and the 777. Now, at the time of their release, they were pretty good aircraft. I ended up owning, I think, pretty much all of them at one point at the very least. I had the 757 and the FS9 version that was just continuously ported over until P3Dv4. I had their 767 and FSX. More recently, ended up getting their 757-3 for P3Dv4, and in P3Dv3, I had the Captainsim 757. So nonetheless, I've had my fair share of Captainsim products and their competitors as well. Now, Captainsim used to have an ideology that was based around relatively affordable, not too deep in systems, but everybody knew it, aircraft, which I felt was a good business model because, they didn't charge absurd prices and they didn't proclaim to be the best in the business. And I liked that. Now recently with the 757-3, they are shifting from that and they're kind of changing and trying to get up there with the more critically acclaimed development groups such as PMDG, FS Labs, and so on. So where does Captainsim stand on this with their 777? Well, let's start with the positives first. The aircraft is beautifully modeled, and I feel like Captainsim as a group, they usually don't have any problems with modeling. Yes, their 757 and 767, their winglet modeling initially was a little bit questionable, but as with the 757, that was technically a real wingleted version. It just wasn't very common or popular. So, modeling wise, Captainsim usually does a pretty swell job. This aircraft is beautifully modeled, as you can see, and it is very fun to look at. I enjoy just staring at it or turning on cinematic mode and just looking at the airframe. As you can see from this wing view, the engine is pretty beautiful and I really love how it looks, and it's just the aircraft itself is modeled very well. Now I'm using Tomatoshade as well with this right here, but I do believe they will be incorporating some of P3Dv4's PBR features very soon. At least I'd expect them to. The aircraft, as I've mentioned just a few seconds ago though, it's beautifully modeled, it's done very well, and it looks great. It looks great. Now we all know that there have been some 777s for some simulators that weren't modeled too well per se, but I feel like Captainsim, this isn't a problem for them. The modeling of the aircraft looks very nice. They have wear and tear, the rivets and the fuselage panels, they all look pretty great, and I think they did a pretty swell job, and I feel like this is where LatinVFR excels. I'm sorry, I keep saying LatinVFR as I was talking about them quite a lot in the last video. Captainsim, this is where I feel like they excel, and as we look at the Flapjack Fairings, just the mechanisms for how it's done, it's modeled very well, and I feel like this just really highlights how well Captainsim can model. They can model very well. Excuse the engine shake right there. Captainsim can model very well. If you look at the landing gear struts and the design right here, I do believe that the landing gear design is different with the 200ER in comparison to the 300s and the 200LR with some landing gear components right here. I'm not going to try to get all technical with it because I will probably say something wrong, but I just do like the attention to detail that they've done with the landing gear right here. Aside from the modeling, another thing that I like about the Captainsim 777 so far is the fact that they're going to be including the Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney variants, as well as the 300, not 300ER, 300 with the Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney engines. I, for one, am a huge fan of the 200ER, and I feel like it just kind of gets neglected, honestly, and hides behind the shadow of the 300ER with the GE90s. And I, for one, am kind of a fan of the 777 without raked wingtips. I think it looks great, and I really do like, and honestly, my favorite engine variant on the 777 is the Rolls-Royce Trent, despite some controversy with that. But I'm really happy that I'll be able to properly fly American Airlines, Delta Airlines, British Airways, and all these other airlines with the 200ER, as those are relatively large parts of their 777 fleet, and they don't use the LR model. So I'm very happy that I'll be able to have a more accurate version of that. So I think that's great that they are including all the engine models, and at least stated in the beta, if you opt into the beta now, you'll receive all of those updates for free. Now, I'm not sure if you'll have to pay for them later on. I think that would be kind of unfair if you did, nonetheless, but I'm not sure. If you want more information, just check out the Captainsim information, which I will have linked in the description. Alright, so now that we're in the cockpit, we can start to see where some of the faults of the product are. The texturing, for one, in my opinion, looks as if it's from pre-2010 for FSX, which I feel is a little unacceptable for P3Dv4 and 64-bit simulators in 2019. Of course, I could be nitpicking. This aircraft is very much so in beta and things will change, so I could be totally wrong and the textures could change. However, this is a literal direct port over from the FSX version. Excuse me, I should actually say the 32-bit simulator, since this was in P3Dv3. I do not think they will be offering any discounts, which I think is a little unfair because this is a literal port over, nothing new. Very few things, excuse me, are new or added or improved. It's basically the same aircraft, just ported over, so I think it's a little unfair if they don't charge or at least give a discount. However, that's just my opinion, I digress. But, as you can see, the PFD colors are kind of off, not kind of off, they are wrong. And as you can see, just the fonts could be a little better. And overall, the aircraft just looks washed out, and it just looks a little unappealing compared to a real 777. Now, of course, you could probably modify the textures, but compared to the PMDG, which this aircraft does compete with, I honestly do not believe it is superior to the PMDGs. Looking at the flight management computers, it is a little disappointing. The fonts feel a little off, in my opinion, at least compared to the PMDG airliners or real Boeing FMCs. Of course, I could be totally wrong, and the font could be like this in reality. I'm not looking at a real reference picture right now, but it just feels a little off right now. Also, as you notice, it is a mirrored FMC, which is something that is kind of, I want to say, unacceptable in 2019. However, I don't really mind it, but it is something where it's just kind of like, you know, we expected more. We expect, you know, separate FMCs at this point because, you know, we're doing more complex and we have more complexity in our aircraft. So sometimes, at least when I'm in the PMDG 737, I'll have one FMC, perhaps the left one, on my takeoff settings in perfs, and the right side maybe on the route with the legs page. So I would prefer it if they weren't mirrored, but again, I could be wrong. In the real release version that is not in beta, which is this one, it could be improved, I'm not sure. But as we can continue on with the flight deck, as you can see, it just looks a little washed out. The modeling itself is okay, that's not where much of the problem lies. I think more or less it's just that the textures look a little washed out. You need a texture overhaul, and that could really bring a lot more life into this product right here. In the post, Captainsim exclaimed how they had improved the sound of the aircraft. Now, I'm going to stop muting the simulator, and I'm going to turn on the sound. And in my opinion, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to let you guys listen to it for yourselves. So as you heard, sound-wise, I feel like the product is lacking, and we just caused a go-around. Sorry, buddy. Oh, it's an MD-83. Ooh, that's nice. But I just feel like the sounds are lacking for this aircraft. And as you heard from the takeoff warning horn, it is terribly inaccurate to the 777.
200.
And I feel like that's unacceptable. I mean, at least try to get a little remotely close. That's the exact same sound from the FSX version back in early 2010s. And I feel like, come on now, Captainsim, that's something that should not be in a $135 product. Sounds of this quality is unacceptable. For a $59 product, it's a little different, but for $135, that seems absurdly wrong. So, just so you can listen to it again, turn on autopilot, turn it off. Yeah, the 777 does not make this sound. This is the incorrect sound, just flat out. Another thing I want to chime on is performance. Compared to the PMDG, performance is equal, if not worse, not better. And I feel like that's a little bit lacking, considering the fact that the systems are not as deep compared to the PMDG. And it's just that, I mean, it has a lot of cool system features that the 777 has, and it's flyable. You can fly from A to B, and a friend of mine who was taking it out for a test flight stated that the VNAV was pretty okay, not as bad as the 757 was initially. But realistically, I had to turn off the external or 3D cabin because my performance was kind of struggling at some points, and I had to turn down the landing light intensity because, again, performance was kind of hard. Captainsim, they add a lot of little features that are cute, eye candy things, but from a performance standpoint, it could be better. And I really hope by the time this aircraft leaves beta that the performance aspect of it is indeed better. As you can see, from this video, there are some lag spikes here and there. And yeah, I just feel like it could be a little better. Now, as you can see, I'm looking down at the electronic flight bag. This is a nice little thing they had, but it's not as functional, in my opinion, as the PMDG electronic flight bag that they will be incorporating in their aircraft. It has SIDS stars, but again, this is something where you have to incorporate or put in your own images, which, I mean, that's not a problem. The 737, or I'm sorry, the Zibo 737 and the 737 Ultimate does the same thing. It's not a bad thing. But it's just like, I mean, the PMDG will actually show you real cameras and all. Well, not here, obviously, but on the actual display. But it's just that Captainsim, they need to bring this aircraft to 2019 standards. It's still kind of being held back by older standards. And that's what I feel like the aircraft is not worth $135, which is rumored to be the price as stated from Nick Flight X. Alright, I'm going to take the aircraft off for a very quick takeoff and landing just to kind of evaluate its in-flight performance. So I'm going to unmute the simulator. I've got flaps 15, and we're going to advance the throttles. And then just now, as I'm rolling off as my airspeed's increasing, I kind of want to point out another thing that was kind of just a little disappointing with this aircraft. Oh, we're rotating already. Okay, I'm sorry. My yoke is kind of pressed against my keyboard right now, so it's already in the up position. Ooh, positive rate. Landing gear up. What? Oh, goodness. And we're pitching kind of high, so let's trim down a little bit. Alright, so from a flight dynamics standpoint, the aircraft, it's okay. It's not terrible. It's not the worst I've had. It's definitely not the best, though. Again, for $59, it seems pretty adequate. You know, I feel like there's some weight to the aircraft. If I try to roll it completely to the left or roll it completely to the right, there's a bit of a delay since, you know, it is a heavy airliner. Acceleration-wise, if I advance the throttles and firewall them, I feel like it accelerates at an okay pace, you know, it seems kind of realistic there. And deceleration, if I idle the throttles. Not sure I'm getting a gear warning, I'm at flaps 5, but okay. Deceleration, I feel like it's a bit unnaturally fast, as you just saw right there. I went from nearly 260 knots to about 210 in an awfully short amount of time. As you saw just there, again, there it is again, you know, just a little bit of a lag spike. Again, I don't really have this with PMDG aircraft. That's not a problem there. And quality wings in my LatinVFR video, again, I didn't have that as a problem. And I turned down settings for this aircraft. I think it just kind of builds on the whole premise that Captainsim needs to better optimize this aircraft. And it's just a little bit of a disappointment overall because we're getting better optimized aircraft that are at least like the TFDI that is continuously being updated and improved. But Captainsim, you know, their aircraft, you know, still has optimization issues. Alright, I'm going to bring the aircraft around to land relatively shortly here, where we can see how the ground effect and the landing is in this aircraft. I've actually never landed the Captainsim 777 in P3Dv4. I've not landed the aircraft before, is what I'm trying to say. So this is my first time landing, and I've brilliantly decided to do it on camera. So if I slam into the ground,
2500.
That was terrible. Is that the new Jviation sounds they have? Seriously? Oh, that's ew. Quick side note, as I'm getting ready to land and I'm desperately trying not to hit this AI traffic, Captainsim boasted about how they incorporated brand new ground proximity warning sounds, and quite frankly, that was terrible. Oh my god. Seriously? That's the new sounds they're bragging about? Oh my god, please. Oh.
1000.
Ew! If the aircraft doesn't vacate relatively quickly, I'm just going to turn off traffic.
500.
Can you get off the runway, please? I mean, the aircraft feels okay, you know, bringing it down. Again, it feels like it has weight, which, I mean, I guess that's a good thing. But, it's like, it feels okay. My control responses feels a bit fast, but...
100.
Oh my goodness, you've got 3 different...
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Okay, so as you heard from the ground proximity warning, they had 3 different sound sources, if you could tell, for different callouts, and I thought that was just, oh, that's I could do better than that. Oh my goodness, that's, again, for a, it's in beta, so that could be totally wrong, and the aircraft could not have this. But for a $135 add-on that they're anticipating, this is just flat out unacceptable. No, you don't. No, freeware does better than this. At least the callouts in a freeware aircraft are consistent. They have the same tone, same source. It's just a bit disappointing. Unbelievable. Flight dynamic wise, when landing, it felt a little too nimble, but it felt okay because the aircraft is kind of light. I set the fuel tanks to a relatively light weight, if you will. Another thing I want to kind of chime in right now, you have to use the default P3D fuel and weight management system, which I think is just atrocious in 2019. No, why should we have to use the default inbuilt simulator system when practically no other developer does that? I think it's just, honestly, this aircraft has a lot of things that needs to be fixed and improved upon in order for it to be even justifiable as a modern airliner for the simulator in 2019. Nonetheless, to wrap things up, I personally believe that this aircraft has the potential to be a pretty good alternative to the PMDG. Firstly, Captainsim needs to fix the product flaws, such as the sound. You need to fix the callouts, you need new textures, maybe tweak the flight dynamics a little bit here and there. That would go a long way. Secondly, for the love of God, please do not charge $135 for this aircraft. You're stepping into PMDG territory. And honestly, PMDG blows this out of the water in terms of just functionality, texturing, and just system depth. It's just, the PMDG is literally, the epitome. And you're trying to say this is equal to that when it's not. This is a good, cheap alternative to it, where it's not as deep system-wise, but it's a good, cheap alternative for people who don't want to spend $140 upwards so for a 777 where they won't use all of the systems. If Captainsim sells this aircraft for $59 and doesn't go ballistic with the expansions as they did with the 757, because let's be real, the pricing for the 757 was a little bit absurd, especially with the freighter pack. That was $50, really? You can buy multiple sceneries. You could almost buy the TFDI 717, and what do you get? Just a few more 757 variants? Really? That just felt kind of unjustly expensive. Captainsim, respectfully, I will continue to buy your products, but please do not overcharge with this. It's a direct port over that needs a little work, and if you charge $59 for it and you don't go ballistic with the expansion, say you charge $20 for the 300ER expansion, that's very reasonable. I would have no problem, no hesitance paying for that. But if you charge something like $50 for it, most certainly not. No, I'm not. That seems absurd. Please don't fall into the same trap you did with the 757. And the same kind of applies here. If you opt into the beta now, you'll get the extra engine and the LR variant for free. Now, if you don't, I think you're gonna have to pay $135 upwards for that, which again, I think is an absurdly high pricing. And I understand that, yes, they go back in and have to remodel things and redo things, but I mean, come on, PMDG, they made multiple the amount of differences and amount of detail and the different variants they did for the 747-400 for one price, it's just like, please, Captainsim, don't do that. It's okay to not be PMDG. Do what Quality Wings did, where they publicly stated, we're not PMDG and we're okay with that. And the community is okay with that. Overall, if you had around $60 to $70 to spend, would I recommend this aircraft compared to the Quality Wings 787? I'm gonna say no. I would say get the Quality Wings 787 if you want a long-haul aircraft for around $50 to $70. This aircraft it needs work. It's flyable. It flies from A to B. It is a very photogenic aircraft. It's beautiful for screenshots, but in terms of actual functionality and just user ability, it falls short. And I really hope that Captainsim doesn't just quit halfway, or they don't cheat out, or they don't screw over their customers again with this one. They kind of dented their reputation with the 757, and I really hope that with this 777 they can repair what they've done and at least build back customer confidence, where people feel like, you know, we're getting an okay deal, we're not getting scammed or something. Nonetheless, that's pretty much all for today's first impressions video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to smack the like button for more content such as this, and thank you for 8K, we recently passed that. Anyway, I'm Jordan, thanks for watching. Okay, trim down. If you move fast, up. Oh my god, why is the trim moving so fast? Oh my god.